Welcome to On My Way to Wealth, the podcast where busy Gen Xers can learn financial tips as they navigate life on their way to wealth. And now, please join your host, Luis Rosa.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of On My Way to Wealth, Hispanic Heritage Month edition. My name is Luis Rosa, and I'm your host. Hispanic Heritage Month takes place from September 15th to October 15th every year as a time to recognize and celebrate the many contributions, culture, and extensive histories of the American Latino community. It first began as Hispanic Heritage Week in 1968 and later on became Hispanic Heritage Month in 1988. Since then, the month has been celebrated nationwide through festivals, art shows, conferences, community gatherings, and much more. The reason it starts on September 15th is because it celebrates the independence days of several Latin American countries, including Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua on September 15th, Mexico on September 16th, and Chile on September 18th. They also include the holidays that recognize Hispanic contributions such as Virgin Islands Puerto Rico Friendship Day, which is celebrated in the U.S. Virgin Islands the second Monday in October. For this month, I'd like to highlight individuals who have made a great contribution in their chosen profession and the community at large. So now I'd like to introduce you today to our very special guest, Ana Trujillo Limon. Ana has worked in the communications and media industry for more than a decade. Her career started as a reporter at the Santa Fe New Mexican before she took a job as an editor in an outdoor industry trade magazine in Colorado. She's currently the senior editor for the Financial Planning Association's publications, including the Apex award-winning Journal of Financial Planning, the FPA Next Generation Planner, and Practice Management blog. Ana serves on the FPA Diversity Committee and is the co-founder of FPA Latino, a member resource group for Latino FPA members. She is a member of the nation's first Latina sorority, Lambda Theta Alpha, the Association of Latino Professionals for America, and the American Copy Editors Society. She lives in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, with her husband, Jamie Limon, and their two dogs, Zena and Baloo, which you might hear during this recording. So just a little warning there. And now, without further ado, Ana Trujillo Limon. Welcome, Ana.
Thanks so much for having me, Luis. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an honor. I'm glad. I know that you're super busy running all these publications, so I appreciate you taking the time. I know that our audience is going to really get a lot of it out of this episode. So tell us a little bit about your background and your upbringing.
Yeah, so I grew up in a really small town in southern Colorado called Antonito, and we only have about 800 people in our town. We don't even have a stoplight. Very, very small. And it's predominantly what my mom refers to as Indio Hispano. So a lot of people at home identify as Chicano or Mexican American. So there is no diversity in my hometown. There is no, Anglo people. There's no Black people. It's very, very homogeneous. So that's kind of the environment I grew up in. The four of us, I have four siblings. I'm the youngest of four, 3 girls and a boy. We didn't grow up speaking Spanish. My parents made a conscious decision not to teach us. So, when they were little, they grew up going to Catholic schools, Benedictine nuns, and would get hit every time they spoke Spanish in school. So they they foresaw that we might come across similar struggles. So they made that decision, which is a disservice to us. But, we learn to live with it and try to teach ourselves as we go along in our life. But so then I went to school in Miami. So I went from a small town of 800 people to Miami, which is a culture shock in itself. And, in Miami, the dominant culture is Latino culture. They're from all over the world. So it's a beautiful melting pot. I love Miami. I love that city. But my ancestors primarily hail from northern New Mexico. So my family has been in that area since before the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo ceded that land to the United States. So technically the border crossed my family. So technically, if we're looking at it from an establishment of when that area became the United States, my siblings and I are 8th generation Americans. So, in that area of the country, that region is a very different culture. A lot of people, it's very split between people who identify more with their Indio roots and their native roots and people who identify more with their Spanish roots. So it's a very mixed feeling down there, and it's very different. I personally identify more with my native roots. My mother's family, my great grandmother Virginia Borrego, she came from a Tewa reservation called Okeawinga. So a lot of the way we live in our culture and in my family is the traditions are very similar to those that she passed down to them. So that's pretty much my background. So a northern New Mexican, southern Coloradan, that's kind of my history.
Wow, that's such a rich culture. So I'm intrigued. Tell me a little bit about how you went from a town with not one light to Miami. Like, that is quite the culture shock, I would imagine.
Yes, definitely was. But I was a freshman in high school, and I have an auntie and uncle who have, the two of them have in particular, they're brother and sister. They're my mom's siblings, my auntie Virginia and my uncle Eddie. They really have helped me, explore the world and see other things that I never would have seen from my small town. My auntie lived in California when I was growing up, and she would bring us out there, and she showed me the ocean for the first time in my life, and she would take me to plays, and she would, really stress that the culture, like enrich your culture, learn as much as you can about everybody's culture. So my uncle Eddie, actually, he would let us tag along and on his vacations. And one year he wanted to go to Key Largo. And so he asked my brother and I to go. So we went to Miami for a day. And I remember we passed by the University of Miami and we went to South Beach, and it was like a kid-friendly restaurant that had salsa dancing. And me and my cousin, we were, dancing and having the best time. And I just remember like that happiness that the city made me feel. It was amazing. I was like, I want to feel that. I want to feel that while I'm in college. And so from the time I was 15 years old to, that was the only school for me. So I chose it based on the city. And the journalism program was one of the top 10 in the nation, which is what I majored in college. So that's why I ended up at the University of Miami and in the city.
Wow, that was a great fit. So that decision was made for you, how you were like, that's it, I'm going here.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about how do you feel that your Hispanic heritage has shaped your career?
For sure. So I have always been part of like affinity groups, and it started when I was that same year, actually, when I was 15. My mom, she forced me to become part of the National Hispanic Institute. And so I didn't want to do it. But then I would go every day and we'd practice. So the NHI was founded in Texas, but it kind of spans across the nation, and they have programs for freshmen through seniors. So my freshman year, I went to this thing called the Great Debate. And so I decided to participate in extemporaneous speaking. And when I got there, I didn't know, I prepared my research and, got my speech questions and wrote my speeches and competed and ended up getting second. And I remember just the feeling of community there. Like, we were kids from all over the nation, and we came together and we looked alike, and we had so much passion, and that feeling I always wanted to replicate throughout the whole, my whole career, my whole college experience. So like I told you about my background, I never felt like a minority because I went to school in Miami after growing up in Manzanito. Then I moved to Santa Fe, which was my culture. Everybody in Santa Fe looks like me and is similar to me. So I never felt like that until I moved to Denver. And so when I moved to Denver, and my dad's family, they moved here after a period of time. So my aunties and uncles actually grew up here, but it's not the same city it was. And people will tell you it is a very jarring experience to move here if you are from Florida. So the Alpha chapter of Denver is currently being revived, and most of the women are from Florida. So they talk about the culture shock coming here to Denver. But I experienced that, and I wasn't even coming straight from Miami. So I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And then the outdoor industry, is very, very white, and I felt very lonely, and it was just a very painful experience. And I always, I grew up wanting to be a journalist, wanting to be a reporter and editor, but in my mind, it kind of took a turn that I want to create a culture and resources for people like me who feel lonely in professions where they are the only one that looks like them, or maybe they aren't, but they don't know where the others are. And like, let's make organizations to help find each other. So that's kind of how it shaped my career. It's giving me kind of a renewed purpose. And that's kind of why I founded FPA Latino with the help of Luis Barajas, who's a really big name in financial planning. And he's helped so many people in the community, and he's really always willing to help out and mentor people. But he stepped up and helped me found FPA Latino because he had the same vision for a lot longer than I did. So it was really, he'd been trying to do something like that for a long time. So we were able to make it happen. And it's still in its infancy. It's only 2 years old. So, we hope that it grows. over time, but the way it's shaped my career, being Hispanic, has shaped my career because I wanted to create a space where we can connect with each other. And that ultimately has become my passion and my calling.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I'm so glad you created that, because when I attend those calls for the FPA Latino, there's always so much value that I get from it. So shout out to Luis Baraz
That's
too.
good to hear. Yeah. Yes. Thank you always for your always.
Yeah. I'm glad that you mentioned the word mentor, because I wanted to ask you about that. Like, who has been one of the most influential people or persons in your life?
Yeah. So if we're looking at professional mentors first, I have to say, the editor of the Journal of Financial Planning, Carly Shulaka is her name. She has been a really tremendous mentor over the almost 7 years that I've known her. And not just a mentor, but a champion, and she just advocates for me. She sees my talent. She believes in me. Sometimes when I don't believe in myself, she, if a sponsor is the word I'm looking for, that term is frequently used by, find you a sponsor when you're in a profession where you're the only one who looks like you're one of just a few. And she truly embodies that. She's the most inclusive person I've ever met. And she really created a home for me at FPA. So I always be grateful to her. But when it comes to, who's influenced my life in other realms, my family, it's so hard to choose just one with my family, my mom and dad and my sister and my brother, and then my auntie and uncle who I mentioned earlier, all of them have really, influenced me. Education has always been a big part of my family's heritage, I suppose is the word I'm looking for. So for instance, a fun story is my grandmother, Josephine Lucetta was her name. When my grandfather proposed, she's like, only if you let me go to college. I'll marry you only if you let me go to college. So they got married and they had 5 kids, and eventually she went to college, in her 50s, so she,
wow.
I think she would really be proud of the legacy she left, because in my family, we have 3 people with doctorates. We have a dentist, a physical therapist, people with multiple master's degrees. It's very impressive what she did with that one bit of negotiation, because she's the one who passed it down to my auntie and my mom, who passed it down to us, who we in turn are passing it down to the next generation. So that value of education really helped me a lot. And then last but not least, I think my husband, Jamie, and my dad, they're both veterans of wars. And I think having them be so positive and resilient and in the aftermath of everything they've gone through is just, to me, it's really amazing. And they inspire me, and especially my husband. He's just such a big champion. He's always like, don't doubt yourself, and you can do this. You can do anything. I was wanting to apply to the Latino Leadership Institute a few years ago, and I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. I'm not really a leader. And he's like, yes, you are. And he gave me this big pep talk. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I am. So I applied and got in and graduated. And so just that kind of the people who believe in you and then who you can believe in back, those are the people who've had the most influence on my life. So that was a long list. It wasn't just 1 or 2 people. I'm sorry, but it's really hard in my family to just pick 1 or 2.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah, because it's such a community of support that you had there, and everyone served the purpose, So I'm glad your aunt set the tone for that education going forward. That's amazing. That's amazing. So tell me a little bit about how you got to where you are today. How did you end up being senior editor for FPA and all that?
Yeah, so I got laid off from my job in the outdoor industry, and it was my first layoff ever in my whole life. And I remember it felt very traumatic in the moment. It is a trauma when people get laid off. I know, and it does have lasting effects. So I'm looking for a job, and I'm here living in Denver. I'm single, living alone in a really cute little apartment in North Denver. And, so I'm just looking for jobs, and I didn't even know what financial planning was. And so I found this job for an editorial assistant, and I applied. And I interviewed 3 different times. And I remember the first time I met Carly, I knew, I was like, this is the place for me. She was an ultra runner. She was a marathoner. I used to run marathons, not so much anymore. So we just kind of bonded right in the interview. It was really great. And then I learned about financial planning, and I learned about what you're a financial planner, what you guys do. It's just so amazing. It's such important work. And working at FPA has really changed my life. I have a financial planner now. I'm more conscious of things I didn't know anything about. And so I've stayed at FPA because I really believe in the organization's mission and serving financial planners so they can go out and then do the important work that they do. So I moved up the ranks from editorial assistant to associate editor, and then now to senior editor when I took over the Next Generation Planner last year. So I've been the senior editor for about a year. And so that's how I got to where I am now at FPA in my position.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. That's a great trajectory. And it's funny because you mentioned that you didn't know what financial planning was, and I feel like I went through the same thing. I mean, I graduated college and I still had no idea what a financial planner was. It was not offered in school as a major, and nobody in my family ever even owned the stock at that point or anything, right? And so, yeah, it was just a foreign concept to me. So, pretty interesting to hear you say that as well. So speaking of which now, financial planners, tell me a little bit about the Financial Planner Association and the benefits it provides to the community and the members.
For sure, yeah. So FPA is a membership organization for financial planners. It focuses primarily on CFP professionals, so certified financial planner professionals. So it's a place to connect, to find your community, to find a mentor, to be a mentor, to get your CE credits. Like our in-person events are always my favorite part because the members of FPA have, especially the ones who have longevity, they're just so passionate. And it's always so fun to meet them in person and not just exchange emails with them, because a lot of our members write for our publications. I'm in contact with them, or they're researchers and they submit their research, or they're peer reviewers and they review our research. So to get in front of them and actually talk to them and feel their passion in person is really fun. So that's really the big drive. It's a home. It's your professional home. If you're a financial planner, that's what we strive to do, is just create that community and create that home and create that space where you can develop your skills and be the best planner you could be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that word community because I have seen that with all the different gatherings, FPA gathering and the one day experience and all that. It's just so cool to just see aspiring planners and existing planners just get together and share ideas on how to advance their profession, right? So that's pretty cool. How would anybody that, let's say, if they're interested in joining or getting involved somehow with the organization, how can they go about doing that?
So there's a really great membership page. It's at financialplanningassociation.org/membership. So there on that page, it breaks down the different membership types. So there's, an entry-level membership type that's for aspiring professionals who aren't yet CFP professionals or aren't yet in financial planning, but they want to be. So there's different tiers of it, and you could pick one based on what you're looking for and your credentials. So it has really good explanations on that page of what the different types are, and you could choose which one works best.
Okay, great. Yeah, and for those listening, I will be putting a direct link in the show notes, so you can go to onmywaytowealth.com and just find the episode. And in the show notes, there's a link on how to connect with Ana and also with the FPA as well. So Ana, tell me a little bit about some of the resources you wish you had growing up that could have helped you on your way.
Definitely financial literacy. So I think I went off to college, and in the breezeway one day when there were all these organizations giving out flyers, I applied for a credit card, which is when you're 19 years old and you don't have any self-control. And so I didn't understand compounding interest. I didn't understand my credit card debt was bad. I would, my friends and I, who were all scholarship kids who didn't have a lot of money, would go to the Dadeland Mall, which is this high-end mall in Miami, right? We just buy stuff we couldn't afford that we shouldn't have been buying on credit cards, So, and I know that sounds like common sense, but there has to be a why. Like as a kid, if I had known, my mom just said, don't get credit cards, but you're rebellious as a teenager, but if I had known the why? Because for the next 10, 15 years, you're going to be digging yourself out of that credit card debt you had so much fun with accumulating. So if I had known the ins and outs more of financial literacy and terms and how they played into real life, I think I would have made better choices. And I would have gotten to where I am now at a stable place a lot sooner. So that's definitely one thing I wish that all the kids would have. And I'm definitely instilling it in my nieces and nephews now before they go to college and don't turn out like I was my first 10 years out of college.
Yeah. And one day they'll be looking back and saying how grateful they are for that information you're giving them, because I can completely relate. When I went to college, I remember the applications for credit cards were embedded in the books at the bookstore.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. Like they were inside the books, and I applied for them. I had no idea. I didn't even have a job freshman year, and I got approved, and then next I'm charging trips to Cancun for my spring break.
No. Oh, man. Yes.
It's crazy. So I definitely didn't have that, and growing up. And it's like you said, it's like I saw my parents work hard, but they never owned a credit card or anything like that. So it was nothing like they could sit down and say, hey, this is how compound interest works, I mean, at best, they had a savings account. That's it. Like, so it wasn't like they knew about 401ks and compound interest and investing and all that, and credit cards. And so very interesting. Yeah. So your nephews and nieces are definitely blessed to have you now, giving them the the lowdown on credit cards, without a doubt. So tell me a little bit about what do you think that Latinos today are lacking? I know you mentioned in your case was financial literacy. Do you think is that still the case today, or is there something else that you feel like is lacking today?
I think in the professional setting, especially resource groups, I think especially in this space that we're in, there's a lack of research groups, not just for Latinos, but for a lot of different, like there's no Asian American research group for a lot of places. There's no Latino research groups that I've heard of within our immediate space. And I think that if I had that available to me, it helps keep people engaged and keep people loyal to an organization and makes them feel a level of psychological safety when they have the ability to connect with each other. And they know that there are people there who have their back. That is really important, that I think is missing, that connection, that resource group. So that's what we're hoping to accomplish as FPA Latino. And I hope you guys are feeling that it's taking that turn and becoming that thing, because that's ultimately one of the goals for it. But that's what I think is really lacking in a lot of professions, not just ours.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a very important point. Appreciate that. So if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Other than flying, I would want the ability to solve the racial wealth gap. As a Latina, especially, and learning about the racial wealth gap, I didn't realize that it even existed, and anyway, that would be my superpower. I would just solve it and it would be done.
That's it. Wave the wand.
Yep.
And that would be a great contribution to the world, without a doubt. So let's get into some fun stuff here. But before I do so, I wanted to ask you, what is one common misconception that you believe people have about Hispanics or the Hispanic culture?
I think people have a misconception that simultaneously we are both lazy and hardworking. Like, it's so weird. I think sometimes people like, oh, like she works so hard, or she stays late hours, or but then there's that, lazy stereotype that I had no idea where it comes from. I have never met a lazy Latino in my life. So I'm not sure, but I feel like that's a big stereotype, that misconception that's out there.
That's a good point. Yeah, because you hear sometimes too, people say like, oh, like they take people's jobs, or whatever, right? And it's like, well, which is it, right? It's like, are we lazy? Are we hard workers?
Pick one.
Yeah, pick one. That's a good point. What do you love about being Hispanic?
Oh gosh, our cultures are so rich. We're all so different. We're not a homogeneous ethnic group, and everybody brings such richness to our experience, and we all learn so much from one another. And I think that's what I love most, is that it doesn't matter who you meet. We're a community. Even though we're different, I feel like we're always striving to be a community, and we're very community and family oriented. And that's what I love most about. Like, I could go anywhere and connect with, you guys at FPA Latino or folks at Alpha, or, and it's like, you feel like it's a community. And that's one of my favorite things.
Yeah, that's true. You got like the immediate connection for sure.
Yep.
So tell me one thing that you're grateful for today.
Oh, today. Well, I'm grateful to be on this podcast today, that's for sure. But other than that, in this time of severe instability and people losing their jobs, I'm really grateful to have gainful employment and to be able to pay my bills right now, especially during this pandemic. A lot of people don't have that. And if we could just be grateful for that one thing, if we're blessed enough to have it, I think having that attitude of gratitude, it really makes everything better throughout the day, because there's so many things right now we could be negative about, but we really just need to strive to focus on the positive things. And even just something like that people take for granted, but that's what I tell myself every day. So that's what I'm grateful for today. I have a good job. I have a good, nice house. I have a beautiful family, and, just soak it all in and be grateful.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of things we can focus on that are negative, but I feel like there are certain things that are so important that if you didn't have them, nothing else would matter, like your health and your family, right? And also, yeah, the ability to still have a job and pay your bills. I mean, there's 40 million plus people right now that can't say that, right? So that's big, without a doubt. And I love what you said about attitude of gratitude. Focus on the positive, you probably get more of it, right?
Oh yeah, I recently read this book called The Power of a Positive Team, and they talk about, we all have our positive dog and our negative dog, and the dog we feed is the one that gets big and strong. So feed your positive dog instead of your negative dog. So I'm always thinking of that, and that always helps me.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I like that. So it's like whatever you focus on is going to get the most energy, and you're probably going to reap the benefits. And unfortunately, it can go the other way, right? If you focus on the negative stuff, you probably attract more of it.
That is true.
Yeah. So tell me, what is your favorite Latin cuisine?
This changes all the time. But lately I've really been jonesing. Yeah, lately I've really been jonesing for some, carne asada and queso frito and gallo pinto from this little spot in Miami called El Yambo, and it's a Nicaraguan restaurant. It's so good. It's open 24 hours. So if you're in Miami and you need something delicious to eat, I would recommend it. But I've really been craving that. But the queso frito, it's not healthy. It's like a big block of fried cheese. But that's one of my all-time favorites.
Who doesn't love fried cheese, right?
I know, right? Doesn't make any sense.
Well, when I go to Miami, I'm going to reach out to you just to, make sure I know the name of the place. Because typically when I've been to Miami, it's like, well, I got to get Cuban food, right? There's this place, I think it's called Puerto Sagua, if I'm not mistaken. It's on Collins and like 18th or something like that. And not sure if it's still there. It probably is, but that was like the spot,
Oh, yeah.
to get the Cuban food. But interesting. I've never had Nicaraguan food. I definitely must check that out. So tell me, what is your best piece of advice for all Hispanic men and women out there that are trying to go after their dream? Like if there's a young Ana out there listening who's getting started or about to, what would you tell her?
I would tell her to tackle that imposter syndrome early, because that feeling like, oh, I'm not good enough for this, or I can't possibly do this, or oh, I can't possibly get that degree or that certification or get that job. Like that is detrimental to me in particular. I don't know if it's detrimental to a lot of other people, but tackling that and really starting to have faith in yourself and believing in yourself is really key to growth. And also, negotiate your salary. I didn't know as a young college graduate, you're supposed to negotiate your salary, but I missed out on a lot of wealth because I didn't do that for the first half of my career. So definitely do that. And my last piece of advice is, get your education, because nobody could take that from us. Get your degrees, your bachelor's, your master's, your certifications. Nobody could take that from us. And reach down and reach down and lift others up as you climb, because a lot of times, especially people from my hometown, being from such a small town, a lot of people tend to leave. Like I left, but we have to reach back and give back to our community and bring others with us and help out how we can. We can't forget about where we came from and who we came from.
That is so true. Yeah, I think if we've been blessed enough to be in a position where we are today, we have to pay it forward and just keep that ongoing, right? And just when people ask you, how do I pay it back? Well, you just, take care of somebody else just to keep it going. I love the tip about negotiating your salary, because it's true. I feel like sometimes, especially when you're younger, you're just so excited to be offered a job that you're just like, yes. And like, that's it, right? Like, there's no counter offer. Like, yeah, that is a thing. You could counter back, and not just your salary, but even certain employee benefits, right? Stock options and things of that sort.
Or even in this day and age, like negotiating a student loan payment plan, because student loan debt is so high right now, and that's another great benefit. But Elizabeth Suarez, she's a negotiation expert here from Denver, and she went from engineering to negotiation. She's amazing. So she has a book called The Art of Negotiation, I believe is the name of the book. But anyway, Negotiation Unleashed is her website, but she has some really great tips on how to do that. And just even her book, just reading her book, it's such a quick read. You could read it in a day. And she really helped me a lot. Reading that book and hearing her lecture, it really helped me in my career. I wish I had seen it and heard it sooner, a lot sooner.
Yeah, right. It would have been a game changer for you. I'm going to put the link to that in the notes as well for those of you listening. Yeah, that's awesome, man. Thank you so much. I think this has been so insightful. It's great getting to know you more than, just seeing you like in the publications and in the forums, right? So I know that the FPA audience in particular will really like this as well. So I can't wait to share it.
Yeah, I hope so. Well, thank you again for having me.
Yeah, it is our pleasure. So thank you so much. So for everyone listening, you can go to onmywaytowealth.com and check out all the links that Ana mentioned. I'll provide how to get in touch with her, as well as the Financial Planning Association and that negotiating tip for salary. So that sounds like a pretty cool strategy. So thank you all for listening. If you have any questions, send me an email at luis@onmywaytowealth.com. Also, please leave a review on the Apple and for Apple Podcasts if you like the show, obviously. And if you're interested in financial planning, you can always reach out to me. Go to my business website at buildabetterfinancialfuture.com. Click the Start Here button. Thank you all for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to On My Way to Wealth. If you have any questions, please send me an email at luis@onmywaytowealth.com. The information provided here is for information and education purposes only. The opinions expressed herein are solely those of myself, unless otherwise specifically cited. Material presented is believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations are made by my firm or myself about other parties' information or accuracy or completeness. All information or ideas provided should be discussed in detail with a financial advisor, accountant, or legal counsel prior to implementation. Thank you.